Well, good afternoon. Today is Mindful Monday, and I am so excited to have two lovely women which show me healthy relationships. We have Maren Meyer with us today, as well as Leah Loudon with us, and they're going to give us some great, just enlightening tips around relationships and just how to make great decisions around it. And so, I am going to turn it over to Leah to just share a little bit about, show me healthy relationships.
Thank you so much. So, Show Me Healthy Relationships is a program intended to help teach relationship skills, tips, and tricks to help people reach their goals, because as we know, relationships touch every part of our lives. It's hard to be an engaged student or an effective worker or even a good friend if you're having problems on the romantic relationship front. So we try to really help give people the tools and the skills they need for not only their romantic relationships, but all of their important relationships, work relationships, friendships, family relationships. And these skills and tools help them to identify what a healthy relationship looks like and what it doesn't look like, how to communicate with people without it erupting into an argument, and how to deal with conflict that arises in every type of relationship.
I love it. I mean, show me healthy relationships. It's so needed, right? And a lot of times we don't realize how much we need this in our lives just for people to help us to identify, help us to just guide us through, especially when it comes to transitioning. And so, tell me about a relationship where you find that you guys are really helping to guide, like the most challenging that you guys are helping to guide?
Yeah.
Well, I think really any relationship where there's either conflict that never seems to get sorted out. And so you keep having the same argument over and over and over again because you're not really getting to the hidden issue that's causing the argument, or really just any relationship, because unfortunately, not many of us grow up with a model of what healthy relationship looks like. And if we look to our culture for answers, we're really not going to find it there. Relationships are a lot different nowadays than they were in the past. Really, of all kinds. We don't have, the dad that goes out and works, and the mom stays home and takes care of the kids, and everyone sits down at the dinner table and has these conversations. So it's really difficult for us to recognize whether or not our relationship is healthy if we grew up in an unhealthy relationship, because that becomes our norm. Those maybe bad communication patterns feel familiar because that's what we grew up with. So we
Mhm.
continue those. And these cycles of bad relationships can go from one generation to the next to the next. So, one of the things that we do in our classes is we take a look at ourselves through a really fun personality quiz, and also the our family of origin, to kind of discover some of those patterns that maybe we are reliving from our past that no longer serve us, and
Yeah.
then take a few minutes to decide, okay, how are we going to do this a little bit differently?
Mhm.
Um,
And
we can't just do the opposite. Go ahead, Mary.
Right.
oh, I always like to add in really a big thing that we do talk about are expectations in relationships as well. And a lot of times we don't really know really that we even have them in the first place, which is really frustrating at times. Especially just like Leah said, sometimes we don't grow up with the role models that really show us those healthy boundaries as well and what that looks like. Sometimes we learn things growing up due to media, due to what we watch, what we're listening to. Every once in a while you are listening to music that's going to give you these these expectations about relationships, or you're going to watch your favorite TV show and it's going to show you a relationship and on and off again, on and off again.
Yeah.
I know very many. I'm sure we all know a lot of
Yeah.
TV shows that do that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because influences is it's a real thing, right? I mean, and they come from different forms, you know, the social media, the commercials, the TV shows, the movies. And so yeah, you're right. Both you and Marin and Leah, um, when we're used to watching movies and we may have seen maybe something that may have been dysfunctional but normal in our mind or in our world, right? Then now you're trying to compare, and then you're also trying to figure out, well, what's wrong with me, or what's wrong with my relationship, or you know, or the other person. And so I think that's a great point that you guys are making. And can you tell me who's your audience? You know, who do you guys serve?
So we mostly serve people that at least are single or in non-committed relationships. They all have to be adults, so 18 and up. Unfortunately, that's what we have to do. But we have had people that are experiencing those on and off again relationships. We've had couples that are separated,
Yeah.
so they're on their way to a divorce. We've had a couple before that was really contemplating divorce. We've had people really contemplating breaking up. We've had a lot of just a wide variety of people that have taken our classes before and really have taken information from it and put it into their lives. I know I've had a few participants in the past say, wow, I ended this relationship that was on and off again, and it wasn't serving me any purpose after that.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
good.
our focus is people who are single, but we kind of have a broad idea of what single means. So obviously somebody who's unattached, not in a relationship, or maybe in a new relationship that isn't quite committed, or maybe a committed relationship that they're really starting to question, is this relationship safe, healthy, and is it worth putting the work into, or would I be better served by making other choices? And one of the units we teach is all about, okay, so what if I've decided to make another choice? How do I break up with somebody? What does that look like? What's the best way to go about that? You know, making a clean break without dragging something on, being respectful at the same time. So we have our participants create a breakup manual, and that's a
Yeah.
really fun little exercise.
And I think that's good because, you know, not everybody knows how to cope, right? And so I'm a true believer that, you know, we have to learn to make or normalize speaking about some of these hard conversations, right? Some of these hard emotions that we deal with, because so many of us suffer in silence, right?
Mhm.
And I think, you know, doing what we're doing today and talking about some of these challenges that we face in life can definitely help that person who is suffering and don't know who to talk to, because maybe they don't want to talk to their parents, maybe they don't want to talk to even their best friend, right? Because a lot of times we show up in this world like we got it all together, nothing's wrong, and we don't want to let anybody know that, hey, we got some flaws going on, you know, in our life and with some of our relationships. And so I think that's why, you know, today's discussion is called the hidden cost of relationships. What are some of those things that we really don't even think about when we go into a relationship with our friends? Maybe it's a co-working relationships, because you know sometimes if we don't get over something, it will show up in one of our relationships, right? And so I love this because with financial literacy, because you know we teach financial literacy, we spend a lot of time on financial psychology before we even start talking about budgeting, banking, credit, any of that kind of stuff. We talk about financial psychology. So we dig deep to uproot some of the stinking thinking and some of those hard conversations that maybe nobody has touched on but needed to, because now that's going to help you to get over. And so with that being said, how important is communication when it comes to beginning a relationship, maybe with somebody you're interested in that could go further?
Mm-hmm. Leah, would you like to start it?
Sure, and we could take this in a couple of different directions. I mean, we can take it from a financial point of view because we actually do a whole unit on financial decisions in a relationship because those are important. You know, you don't want to end up falling in love with someone who has the worst credit or just some really bad spending or habits or a bad relationship fight with their money. And 6 months down the road, you're thinking, okay, you
Right.
know, this part of it alone is making me question whether or not we can be together. Because if you've got divergent financial goals, completely opposite spending habits, if you've got one person who is really thoughtful and careful about, you know, how they spend their money and what their relationship with money is, they're already, you know, saving for retirement in their 20s, buying a house, and is super independent. Living without, you know, debt is super important to them. And they're falling in love with someone who can't live paycheck to paycheck because they spend so freely, you know, always
Mhm.
going out on, you know, fancy dinners and buying whatever they want to buy, and just doesn't have a really good, you know, plan for their money. That's going to cause a lot of conflict because when we ask the experts and when we look at the participants in our class, because we always ask, you know, what is it that causes couples to fight? Money is right there at the very top of the list.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you first meet someone, you really do need to make sure that you've got similar values. And money is one of those values. Now, we don't recommend that on first dates you start, you know, with your list of questions. So,
Also, I will add
We're
that.
like, why not?
well, very soon after, that conversation absolutely needs to happen. Go ahead,
And
Maren.
I honestly, financial stress is a pretty well known factor in relationship success as well, where like higher financial stress tends to lead to lower levels of satisfaction in the relationship. And it's kind of wild to think this way, but sometimes people will think, oh, if we just combined our finances together, that's going to be the best option for us. When we haven't really had the conversation, that's going to lead to higher stuff because maybe you say you end up getting in a relationship with someone like Leah said, and it's going to be like, oh, wow, you have a lot of debt. And maybe my name's now tied to that. Maybe now we are feeling this locked in feeling because we signed this lease together and you co-signed on my car for me. Maybe we're financing furniture together and who gets what in here, and it's going to lead to a lot. So something we actually do talk about is really just knowing what your finances are when you start to get into the relationship.
Yes.
The biggest thing is people don't like talking about finances because it's not an attractive subject.
Right.
It puts a lot of stress in the relationship. I know for my own things in my own relationship, my own marriage, my husband and I had a hard time talking about finances, and it took a long time to figure out how to talk about those. But you have to know what your finances are going on into the relationship, and you have to be able to learn together, okay, I really want to plan my goals around this. What's that goal that you have in the future? Maybe you want to buy a house one day. Maybe you just want to rent. Maybe you want to get a boat one day and you're saving up for it. However that may look, you have to talk with each other about it. You can't just assume or expect that they're going to have the same ones. The biggest thing that's going to help us understand also what we're doing, say we're now in the relationship, is just having the budget and what that's going to look like, how much money is coming out every month, how much money is going towards this or that, what day of the month is it coming out, um, maybe how much debt you already have, how much savings you have, how much are you putting towards savings. I that's what I do in my own marriage, and it's been very helpful. And this class, especially with just learning about a lot of finances, it's been very
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah. So good. So good. I love how you talked about making sure you're communicating about the finances up front, right?
Mm-hmm.
Setting expectations is huge. I mean, and I believe in honesty, being able to share with honesty and not hiding anything. And that is something that helped in even my marriage, is we put everything on the table right then and there. I mean, good credit, bad credit. It was, hey, this is who I am. Are you willing to work with me through it, right? And I think that's the question that we have to ask when somebody presents themselves honest, right, with everything on the table. Now you have choices. And so I also love when you said you have to identify your values, making sure that you guys' values align. That is so huge. I mean, I think we can cut a lot of stress off of our relationships if we talk more about our values. And are we trying to go the same distance? Are we trying to go in the same direction? Because hopefully we are, if we're trying to come together as one. Now, one thing that I have learned, even in my relationship, as well as with even some of my clients, is that sometimes we don't take enough time to understand why one is responding in one way or another, especially when it comes around finances and making decisions. And what I've learned is a lot of time it relates, or it goes back, or it's tied to how we were brought up and what we saw. And so, can you guys speak to the audience about how sometimes what we seen when we grew up can affect us in our adult years?
Oh yeah, definitely. The biggest thing is really we learn all these lessons as we grow up and as we go through life. There are lessons that we learn over time that really do sometimes become beliefs to us, and we tend to stick to those even when they're really not the most beneficial to us in the first place. So we tend to be stuck in ways that we see where money just we're not really considering evaluating our finances in the first place. Maybe you grew up with a family that you would hear something along the lines of your parents said, "Oh, the money is the root of all evil," or "No, we don't talk about money in this family." Or maybe you were kept in the dark entirely. Maybe you saw other friends of yours that were getting all these expensive gifts and it made you feel like, "Oh, well, I'm getting this or that." It's really just how you grow up and those lessons that you learn from your family. I know for me, I grew up with a dad that was a pretty big penny pusher, but that's kind of something that I learned and it did definitely follow in for my own relationship. But it is pretty crazy how much we do learn these lessons just so how we grow up and what we're seeing our parents do. Maybe what we're seeing if we have older siblings. Maybe we're seeing what they're doing. Something we have to think about also is just, are we learning how to save money? Are we learning how to invest our money? Are we learning how to put it into where it needs to go within our budget? I don't, Leah, would you like to add anything?
Absolutely. I mean, our relationship with money comes from how we grew up oftentimes. And so if you grew up with not a lot, you might always have that feeling of lack. Um, if you grew up and your parents didn't talk about money and you had no idea how to have a bank account, how to, I don't know if people still balance their checkbooks because we don't really use checkbooks, but if they're paying attention to their spending online or however they do it, if you've never been taught that because it was a taboo subject, then you really have to go out there and figure that out for yourself, which luckily there are more resources and ways to go about that now than I think there have ever been. But, you really do have to go look. Another thing that I think some people bring forward from their childhood is that, maybe their father took care of all the finances and the mom was completely in the dark about, where the money was going, how it was being spent. Which, it would be great to have someone take care of you like that. But if something were to ever happen, I've worked in the financial industry before with women who had no idea what to do, once their husband had passed because they didn't know how to pay bills. They didn't know which investments they had. And, of course, we look in the media and we see all the time there are stories of women or people left with nothing because their spouse was, doing nefarious things with their money and they had no idea. So I think, relationships and money, we really have to make sure that we're all on the same page and that we do have a plan together, even if we keep our money separate. We still have to have a plan of how that money is being spent, and do we have enough life insurance? Do we have the right kind of health insurance? Are we saving for our retirement? All of those things.
So good. You guys, I mean, y'all are right on with everything. And I think our audience is going to learn something, because I think that's so important that we have courage, right? That we have courage to talk about those hard conversations, the things that don't feel good, the things that might ruffle little feathers, right? Mm-hmm. But that's growth. That's sometimes ruffling a little feather, some feathers is healthy, because that means that you guys are talking about something that you're both passionate about, but you're also and this is if you're willing to gain understanding on why you're so passionate about it. I think it can actually be healthy rather than unhealthy, because it can be unhealthy when we just suppress issues that are bothering us and we don't talk about it. That's when it can become unhealthy. And one of the focuses that we really are strongly focusing on for 2023 for Exceeds Expectations is how health and finances, they correlate. They go hand in hand. And so, Mary, you talked about financial stress and how that can impact you. I mean, it can impact you in the workplace because now you're not producing. It can impact you with your relationships because now you're not showing up maybe in that loving way. You might even be, you may not even be showing up, period, and you have isolated yourself, right? And sometimes it's for the people closest to us to be able to identify when that change is happening. And I think that, nowadays, we're not reaching out to our loved ones or to our friends as much as we should, because people are suffering in silence. And so can you tell me about some ways, give us some tips on how we can possibly learn to have those conversations, with someone that is close to us that we think something could be going on, but we don't really know?
Honestly, especially let's say if it is coming with your finances, the biggest thing to just also really keep in mind that talking about finances is a pretty delicate subject. As we said earlier, you learn a lot of lessons growing up. Maybe you learned that talking about money was a bad idea and you're not supposed to do it. So it makes you uncomfortable. So just knowing that it's a delicate subject, really be careful about how do you talk to your potential partner about that. But ultimately, we also really want to know what's incredibly important to you. What's the most important thing to you? Do you want this rather than this? And bring those out. Honestly, just asking very open-ended questions can be very helpful. And starting early on with this person is going to be really beneficial. If we're starting the minute we are now about to move in with each other, that could be really tricky, because now we're combining everything and just combining all that stuff together, and you're about to combine your life together. That's stressful. And also really just how we explore that. So think about your financial dreams, think about your dreams in general, and think about the history as well. Maybe what did they experience? What did you experience? It really does help us when we kind of combine maybe our histories together as we were raised, and it helps to kind of bring out what we're most comfortable with and what we're not most comfortable with. But that is honestly, those are a few pinpoints here and there. Leah, if you would like to add.
Sure. I mean, we urge people to talk about finances in a relationship from not maybe the very beginning, but towards the beginning, and doing it in a gentle way. Like, here's how my family viewed money? What were some beliefs that your family taught you around money? What are some of the goals that you would like to achieve, with your finances? How do you go about doing that? So as opposed to, okay, how much money do you make? How much money do you have in savings? How much money are you spending? I mean, not those kind of direct questions, but kind of getting to it in terms of what are your beliefs and values surrounding money? What are your hopes and dreams surrounding money? Can be a little bit more gentle, and tell you a whole lot more about them as a person and their beliefs and values around money than just being kind of direct and to the point, because you really want this to be a positive conversation so that you're not avoiding these conversations again in the past, again in the future. And I think just being really non-judgmental, because I really do think the road to financial intelligence is a long and windy one, and can sometimes have a lot of historical disasters along the way. I mean, I think back at some of the things I got up to financially, and I'm like, ooh, I was so naive. I didn't realize. And we also talk about potential financial red flags to look for. Just like there are red flags in a relationship, there are definitely some red flags financially that people really need to kind of look at. Look out for.
And I think some of that is sometimes we can just fall head over heels in love for someone. And sometimes we can end up buying love and not really even knowing that's what we're doing, or maybe we're just spending more than what we actually really have, because you're wanting to satisfy that person. You wanting to see them smile, and as long as you're seeing them happy and smiling, then you're continuing to do, but actually at the same time you're going further in debt. How often do you guys have those type of conversations with people, and where they realize that, hey, I'm in trouble, this is what happened?
So I know that we do go over some points on just looking for those red flags, and some things could just, one thing I think is if a person's just refusing to discuss money, that can be really scary, because we sometimes do get into a relationship and maybe we do have those rose-colored glasses on. Everything is just so beautiful, but we're not looking at the bigger picture here. And if we're realizing later on, oh my God, they're not even waiting to talk about it. Maybe now we're realizing, oh my God, you have all this excessive credit card debt or other debt. Maybe we are slowly realizing they're really controlling with money. We've got completely different financial goals and values. Oh my gosh, where do we go from here? And that can get really scary, if I were to say.
Yeah. So good. Well, I want to make sure that I let you guys share like the types of services that you guys offer, because I know you guys have a lot of great things to offer. And I know your classes and workshops and stuff is not just around finances, but just a whole variety of life issues that you can help people. So can you share what you guys have coming up?
Sure. So Show Me Healthy Relationships is a federally funded program. We work through the University of Missouri. So it's the goal is to, again, give people skills and techniques for assessing their relationships to make sure that they're safe and healthy, as well as giving them ways to communicate. It's an 8-week series of classes. We meet once a week for 2 hours. Right now, we're doing all of them virtual so that we can reach anybody in the state of Missouri and part of Kansas, being that we're right next door. We do them via Zoom, and we start a new class once a month. Our next class is starting this Thursday, January 26th. So if you are interested in joining our class, our contact information is below. Shoot us an email, and we'd be happy to get you enrolled.
Awesome. I will make sure that I also share your flyer with our network as well. And I really appreciate you guys coming on today. I think that people have gained a lot of insight from today's discussion. And also, I just think that if somebody wasn't or didn't know what was really going on with them, then there might have been something today that could help them out. And so on today, I just hope that everybody can take that. On today, I hope that everybody has taken away something. And just remember that, health is wealth. What good is wealth if you're not in good health? And that is mind, body, and spirit. And so thank you again, Maren and Leah, for joining us today. And you guys have a great week.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you.